Good morning, PLL students. I am really kind of bummed to have missed this last quarter of PLL because I really love literature, and it's one of the things I decided not to make videos on mostly and just have you work on your own because I think that was possible. But we probably did miss some nuance and we missed some fun discussions. So be it. I would like to end our year with a grand finale of writing an allegory, and I cannot hear you groaning from here, so I'm assuming that you didn't. But I think we can actually, if we set our minds in the right direction, have a little bit of fun with this project. I'm not looking at a long, huge project, so let me put your minds at rest on that. To start off with, I'm thinking I'll require like 1,000 words. If you want to go more than that, that's fine, but 1,000 words is not a real difficult assignment. So what is an allegory anyhow? An allegory is a story, an anecdote, a parable that has typically a second hidden meaning, which is sometimes obvious and sometimes not, because the purpose of an allegory is both to reveal truth to those who want to know it and to conceal truth from those who don't want to hear it. And so if they don't want to understand truth, they might not get it. Jesus used the parable, which is really a form of allegory, for this exact reason. In addition to revealing and concealing truth, an allegory is also used to grab people's interest, to make them interested in absorbing truth that they may not have read if it were an essay, or that they may not have taken to heart if you just told them straight up. An allegory is also to make truth fruitful, to bear fruit in one's life. So let's keep those foundation stones of an allegory in mind as we look at this project. Now, how do we go about writing an allegory? I suggest, I strongly recommend, I require, that you think of a moral or a lesson that you would like to teach first. And then you start thinking of objects and people and scenarios to bring that out. Now, just going back over our last section, let me remind you of some of the allegories that we had here. We looked at the biblical account of the 10 virgins and their lamps. And we saw how the lamps stood for, the lamps and the oil stood for salvation and being prepared. So that's a symbol, an example of a symbol that you might use. We had the story of wheelbarrows. We had a plea for fishing. And both of those were somewhat humorous, albeit sobering, and not at all realistic. And that's another point about an allegory. It does not need to be realistic. You can obviously tell when you get into the story right away that it is an allegory. And that's okay. But it should have some kind of intrigue, some kind of interest or appeal to the reader. We also had John Bunyan's classic Pilgrim's Progress. And we had Nathaniel Hawthorne's Celestial Railroad. So bigger allegories. But many of Jesus' parables are also allegories, so you can use those kind of as a template for you to work from. I might also suggest all of those were spiritual allegories that had a spiritual lesson, but you may have read George Orwell's Animal Farm, and if you haven't, you really do need to go and read that book, and that is a requirement sometime here in the next year or so. That is a political allegory or a social allegory, a little bit of both, where it talks about the social experiment and political experiment on Animal Farm. And it's a very humorous, light read, but it packs a heavy message behind it. And that's often how allegories are. They're not hard to read, unless they're too Old English, like Pilgrim's Progress. Sometimes it gets a little thick. But generally they're not hard to read, and they have some element of interest, but there is a powerful, deep lesson that runs underneath. So, first of all, you choose your lesson or your moral. And it does not have to be complex. It can be fairly basic. Just a general thing like honesty is the best policy. And you go with that and you say, how can I put this into words and pictures? And I'm not talking art pictures, but word pictures that get people's mind picturing something and thinking. I mean, you can picture Christian's burden falling off at the cross. You can picture that celestial railroad chugging along those bridges and through the dark valleys and the dragons and the smoke. And you know, that conjures up mental images, and that's what you want to be doing with your allegory. So that's about all I have as far as assignment. Like I said, I would like for you to hit the 1,000-word minimum at least. Put some creative juices into this. I'm going to give you about a week and a half to write this. I'm going to have this due on Wednesday the 13th. And I would like it done in digital form. So that means you put it in a Microsoft Word document. Make sure that you proofread it. You should actually run a copy of your final draft, proofread it with a red pen, go back and make edits, and then email me that document. Don't put the text in the body of an email, but please email me a document. It's just much more professional that way and doesn't need our job. And if you have any questions, this assignment is given early, so I mean, we're going to talk to each other and probably even see each other. Feel free to ask and discuss this with me. And happy writing. I'm looking forward to reading your allegories, and I think this is going to be an exciting way to end our class, even though we had to skip the discussion part in large portions of it. Have a great day.